Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, everybody, to another Sportsman's Voice Roundup update, news from around the nation in the conservation space. This week, our lead story, CSF chairs and leads the American Wildlife Conservation Partners Summer Meeting, hosted by key partners Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Boone & Crockett. We'll get to Taylor Schmitz here momentarily. CWD detected in eastern Washington state. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry joins the Governor Sportsman's Caucus. Discounted and no-cost licenses in the Great Plains. And finally, we're coming to my state, New Hampshire, where we got an update on bear season that is forthcoming. All that and more for the week of August 19th. But let's turn to Taylor Schmitz down in D.C. Taylor, how are you?
Brad, I'm doing well. It is August recess here in DC, so things are going great, and looking forward to a weekend of fishing.
Oh, good. Some well-deserved time on the water. You, as the folks know here, you're constantly busy working our federal issues and more there on the Hill. So enjoy that time on the water for sure. You were recently out in Montana hosting the AWCP summer meeting, of which you are the chair. We've talked about that and covered that on this program before. Talking to us about the meeting, what it entailed, and why it's important for the folks listening.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I was out in Montana. Unfortunately, I did not get out there. It was solely meeting and business, but nonetheless, I was in Montana. I can think of worse place to be. So yeah, we a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago now, we hosted the American Wildlife Conservation Partners annual meeting, and I say we hosted, as you mentioned, CSF, and me specifically, I serve as the chairman of the American Wildlife Conservation Partners, or AWCP for. But we're actually hosted by our partners, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, meeting portion of the event, and then I think that's a really tremendous opportunity just to highlight those organizations and what they do for AWCP and our partnership with those organizations as a whole, and their leadership within the conservation community. Going back to AWCP specifically, so AWCP is a collection of over 50 of the nation's leading hunting, wildlife conservation organizations, professional scientists, representatives from state wildlife agencies, and others that work under the same umbrella to build unity and consensus on issues facing sportsmen and women. So AWCP is really nothing more than a partnership. Really, again, that goal is to just bring unity and develop a vision for issues facing sportsmen and women, as I mentioned. But you have all of these individual organizations that are working on their respective policy priorities. And all of those things are important. But you have this broader community. And AWCP was really founded to bring all of these organizations with these diverse perspectives, diverse reaches within policymakers or members, and really diverse policy to work under that same umbrella to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction for the greater conservation for sportsmen. So this summer, we have been working hard on developing a document known as Wildlife for the 21st Century, or W21. Every 4 years, AWCP develops this document leading into the presidential election and the next two Congresses, and serves as essentially our blueprint to our conservation priorities for the next 4 years. So within that, we have 9 recommendations ranging from enhancing access for sportsmen and women to conserving migration corridors to active forest management for private lands conservation, everything that you can think of that's an issue facing sportsmen and women and wildlife, pretty much contained. So we spent the bulk of the time in Missoula talking about what's contained in W21 and really spending a lot of time how we're going to make those priorities. So that was the bulk of the meeting. But one of the other things that the meeting provides a really good opportunity for is just getting out and having faith in each other. As you mentioned, I'm I work out of our DC office, and not everybody is based in DC that are members. So
Right.
we get together twice a year, and it provides a really good opportunity to just catch up with each other and build these personal relationships that ultimately help deliver more wins for sportsmen, men and women.
Or is there any well, I imagine if they're gonna go into the document, there's common themes. Is there can you tell the audience, and I don't want you to let cats out of the bag if it's strategically not there yet, but is there a few that really rose to the top that the organization's gonna try to champion on behalf of those 50 plus partners?
Yeah, I would say, and to your point, we will be releasing the final version of W21 in the coming week. So would recommend that folks stay tuned for the launch of that document. But in terms of the number one overall recommendation, I would point to would be fun. And AWCP is the as selected funding as the number one overall recommendation. And the reason being is funding really is central to everything that we're trying to do at the federal level. And when you look at the federal budget overall, um, the federal budget investments into conservation have been cut in half since the 1970s. And that's a significant loss for the things that we care about. So whether you're looking at to increase access to public lands or even private, more oftentimes than not, that requires money. If you're looking to conserve migration corridors for elk, pronghorn, or mule deer, that requires money. If you're looking to conserve and restore habitat on private lands, that requires money. So I would say that funding is really central to every single recommendation, and that's why it rises to the top of the list. But
Yeah.
again, it goes back to that overall cut in terms of conservation from the federal government in terms of financial.
Which, when you think about it in a broader picture, all the special interest groups are fighting for their piece of the pie however they get it, but I know the way our dynamic is set up, it's a little different, but, yeah, for sure, that makes the most sense, and, yeah, without it, we're kinda feet up, if you will, and not getting much done, so, um, good luck to you and your leadership there of that organization and working with our partners, and I have no doubt you'll be able to ring some bells down there once it's available to you. Before we go, I wanted to ask, in my lifetime, this feels at all levels to be one of the most charged political cycles that I can remember. And how does that play in to gaming this out to try to achieve some of the goals of the organization? It just feels so up in the air and volatile. I feel like most 4-year cycles you can kind of get a flavor, which way you're going to go. And even if it's one of two people at the top, or you have an idea what chamber, House and Senate, which way it's going to swing, you can start figuring out which way you're going to go and what conversations to have. This one just it's different, man, and it doesn't feel like anything else. Is that hindering anything, or are you just having to be reactionary to it when it happens post November 5th?
Yeah, and it is certainly different than the elections that I've um, seen in my lifetime. That said, I think for us and our priorities, we write this document the same way regardless. And and the reason being is, as we've talked about on the podcast, and as you regularly talk about, is that these issues continue to be areas of high.
Mhm.
So we do not craft this document any different, depending on and there's a reason that we craft it prior to the election, right? Because this document is intended for all political parties, all walks of life, because there's something in there for everyone. I would say, one of the things that we are trying to message is that we as a country should stop looking at conservation as a luxury.
Okay.
We need to look at this as a necessity, which you and I both view conservation as a necessity. But unfortunately, I don't think the country as a whole views it as a necessity, and it's still really viewed as a luxury. So, just that overall mission and goal of trying to make conservation more of a priority, more of a necessity, is one thing.
Yeah, strong marketing and messaging campaigns forthcoming, I would imagine. Um, and there's that whole 80% that we're constantly chasing. And well, I'll look forward to telling those stories and hearing what y'all come up with as far as tapping into that 80% and making it a priority because I believe once we solve some of that riddle, start solving a lot of our problems like funding, it just becomes an automatic because the people are looking for that and want it. There's a value to it for them all. Before I release you here, I know you're busy. Anything else you want to cover here while you have the microphone or um, heading into the next session?
Yeah, I would just say, again, it's August recess right now here in DC. So members of Congress are back in their district doing in district work. Congress comes back the week of September 9th. So we're really looking forward to having Congress back, despite some of the craziness that is associated with that in terms of day-to-day scheduling. But we're looking forward to trying to deliver more wins for sportsmen and women before the end.
Fantastic. Well, Taylor, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate the hard work you do on behalf of our community and our organization down there on the Hill. It's no small feat, and we thank you for it.
Yep, you bet, Fred. Happy to do it.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. All right, thanks to Taylor for that update. And now let's get to the rest of the headlines. Heading over to Washington State, more bad news. CWD detected in eastern Washington. A little background: CWD is a transmittable spongiform encephalopathy. You knew I was going to stumble on that one. TSE that impacts members of the cervid family, including deer, elk, caribou, and moose. It's highly transmissible uh, disease that always is fatal to infected animals, complicating wildlife management. While there is no evidence currently of CWD passing from deer to humans, the CDC does not recommend consuming meat from known CWD animals. Back on August 1st of this year, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife announced its first detection of CWD. Since the regular testing efforts began, thin deer had been found deceased in Fairwood, Washington, which prompted the testing. Washington is now the 35th state with positive detections of CWD. CSF is working closely with WDFW as they enact the initial emergency phase CWD. The new positive deer places Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife into a Chapter 5 of their CWD management plan during this initial emergency response. The agency will attempt to contain CWD in the immediate detection area. While no announcements have been made at this time, per the plan, the next steps include reducing population density in the immediate area, removing attractants, that is, baiting and or feeding, that artificially congregate wildlife, increase testing, in-state transportation restrictions similar to existing restrictions on transportation of cervids harvested out of state, additional budget requests to fund increased testing and mitigation efforts, and proper disposal of all CWD positive meat. CSF has been working with the state agency representatives as they begin the initial emergency response and move towards long-term management. We will continue to update our partners and the sporting community as more information becomes available. Not a positive update out of Washington. Happier news. Let's go down to Louisiana. Louisiana is known as the sportsman's paradise for good reason. Abundant hunting, fishing, recreational shooting, and trapping opportunities can be found throughout the state, and these traditions continue to be protected in large part by the Louisiana Legislative Sportsman's Caucus. However, having a pro sportsman's governor as a member of the Governor's Sportsman's Caucus, working in partnership with the Louisiana Legislative Sportsman Caucus in both legislative and executive branches to advance pro sportsmen's legislation and defeat anti hunting, fishing, trapping initiatives is a welcome benefit. With that, on August 12th, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry officially became the 30th active member of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation Governor Sportsman's Caucus, or the GSC. Members of the GSC work in concert with the respective state legislative sportsmen's caucuses under the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucus, NASC, to protect and advance our time-honored traditions. Bipartisan GSC was established in 2009 and has worked to shape policy that benefits scientific wildlife management efforts and ensure continued access and opportunities for sportsmen and women across the country. Now, with 30 out of the 50 governors across the country, the GSC extends its reach and further unifies a network of pro sportsmen elected officials who advocate for the interests of sportsmen and women constituents, our fish and wildlife resources, and their habitats. Since taking office earlier this year, Governor Landry has proven to be a staunch supporter of hunters and anglers in the sportsman's paradise. There was no shortage of legislation impacting hunters and anglers during the 2024 general legislative session, and many of these initiatives would have not gained as much steam without the support of the governor's office. Governor Landry has signed several pro-sportsman bills into law, to include a priority bill by CSF, House Bill 795, which championed by caucus members and NASC Executive Council member Representative Jerome Zeringu, and further protected funding conservation through requiring Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries to reimburse lost revenue resulting from the issuance of free discounted hunting fishing licenses by the legislature. Governor Landry follows a history of GSC membership in Louisiana, which most recently includes former Governor John Bell Edwards, who served as a co-chair for the GSC. As Governor Landry is an avid hunter and angler, CSF is excited to continue to work alongside his office and Louisiana Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, continue to advocate for hunting, fishing, trapping opportunities that the sportsman's paradise provides. That's well timed, especially since our NASS summit is going to be in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. So, very apropos, and welcome, Governor Landry, officially. An update here about discounted and no-cost licenses in the Great Plains. With sessions in the Great Plains wrap for 2024, it's a great time to look back on the legislative trend that CSF has been tracking in recent years, efforts to provide certain groups of free and discounted licenses. We've covered this extensively here on the show, some examples coming out of this area. Iowa introduced House File 2505, which would have allowed for veterans to obtain hunting, fishing, trapping licenses free of charge. Nebraska similarly introduced legislative bills 826 and 1036. 826 would have provided non-resident veterans with discounted hunting, fishing, trapping licenses, while 1036 would have provided a free hunting, fishing license and trapping to resident veterans and active military. Again, we've covered this as a priority for us to put a model in place. It's a challenge, right? We've talked about this. As a position for the organization, CSF doesn't necessarily oppose the idea so long as there is a reimbursement model in place. It is a hard deal to come out of when you oppose these things, because who would oppose a free or discounted license to veterans, right? I mean, I'm a vet myself, so I mean that all sounds good, but when you understand how this whole system works, any depreciation of those funds at the state level not being matched at the federal level is problematic. So when and where you have these opportunities, as long as they're willing to add in that funding mechanism that we provide and we advocate for, that can work out just fine. But where you're removing critically needed resources, it can be very problematic. So that update coming from Jake Gould. Thanks, Jake. Finally, as we inch closer to the kickoff of hunting season, I know some people I think are dove hunting right now, but for most seasons they're kicking in here in this week, next week, and definitely the beginning of September. So my home state we go. New Hampshire hunters called on to manage bear populations that are over target numbers throughout the state. We have a ton of black bears and just not enough participation in the management insofar as hunting for them. With that, New Hampshire Fish and Game, through their last rulemaking session, has now decided to offer a second tag in the White Mountain region, which consists of Wildlife Management Unit C1, D2, E, and F. Historically, hunting has been the most efficient, cost-effective, and socially acceptable method of population control. In some areas, bear populations have exceeded population management goals, leading to an increase in bear-related damages and interactions. Overpopulation of species in more residential regions causes human-wildlife conflicts as people come into contact with wildlife. As such, hunting should be codified as the preferred wildlife management tool. I think we highlighted some of those rising incidences at some point last year. Definitely here in the lower part of the state where it's more populated, backyard chicken coops and the like. Bears being attracted to that as a food source. The feed, the chickens, all of it. There's a financial cost. There's a cost in the livestock. There's just it becomes a big mess, and then ultimately it costs the bear its life if it becomes problematic, and they end up getting to it and they can't take care of that habituated bear. So again, we kick our bear season off September 1st. We also are going to have an additional 23 days of still hunting added to wildlife management units L and M. This is the southeastern, highly populated portion of the state. Recently, over the summer, there was an advisory issued to all outdoor enthusiasts in the White Mountain National Forest after multiple bear encounters on the trails. Those trails included Lincoln Woods, Bond Cliff, Franconia Brook, Lincoln Brook, and the Liberty Springs and 13 Falls campsites. These are highly utilized trails, very popular for hiking. So, people camping, not taking care of their food. Again, a lot of the onus falls on us out there. Bears are just eking out a living, but rising populations and more people on the trails, there's bound to be something. So it's a great time to get out. It's a great pursuit. It continues to increase in popularity. Hunters have great opportunities to add bear hunting to their fall pursuits. And it's good table fare too. So, get a bear, add it to your winter stores along with your venison or whatever else you're doing. We have so many acres open to hunting, many in the White Mountain region. So you have a great opportunity as a resident or if you're visiting. So that's it. That's the stories for this week, for the week of August. Oh my goodness. August 19th. We're almost to it. Thanks as always for tuning in, taking us along for your day. We'll see you next Wednesday and then tune in Thursday for a feature presentation. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. We will see you next Wednesday. Thanks for bringing us along. So long. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.